Today we're starting a new series of videos that's looking at the workshop design and build. So I've got to turn this predominantly hand tool workshop into my fast, efficient, effective production workshop. So let's head to the computer and I'll walk you through the design that I've got and the rationale for that design. And then we'll get cracking and turn this place into an area of production.
This is a space we have to work with. It's a 1.5 car garage. It's actually based inside a 2-car garage, but this back area I've allocated to something else, so therefore not using that at the moment inside the business. The single car garage is 2.3 metres wide, it's 5.1 metres long and it's 2.7 metres high. The half car garage is half that size, 2.5 metres long, 2.3 metres wide and again 2.7 metres high. When we're working in such a small space, it's critical that we understand the workflow and how the project is going to move through the space that's available. And I tend to work in zones. I'm using 3 zones in this particular workshop. The purple zone is my start and my finish zone. What I mean by that is this is where my project starts. This is where the raw materials, the rough cut lumber in our case, will come into the workshop, and this is where it will be stored to acclimatise to workshop conditions. Once it's acclimatized, again in this space, I'll be looking at the lumber, evaluating it and working out where I get the pieces for whatever the project is. So laying it out roughly inside this space as well. Once I understand what I need to cut and prepare, I can bring it into my preparation zone, the green zone. This is where I will cut it to length, I will rip it to width, I will create reference surfaces and I will plane it down to its final thickness, really turning the rough cut lumber into cabinet quality timber that I'll then be using to drive the project forward with. Once it's done, I will then move into the production zone, and this is where the actual building comes to life. This is where I do my joinery, the layout, the final assembly of the subcomponents before building the final project, and that will take it back into the start finish zone where I then complete the project, putting the appropriate finish on it, storing it, letting it set before shipping it off to the customer. So now I understand my zones. That gives me the ability to work out what I'm going to put in each zone. The start finish zone is really quite simple. What I need in here is lots of floor space, especially for large cabinets that we might build. So on the wall towards the top, I'm going to have a lumber rack. Now I say most of the material I use is rough cut lumber. I don't tend to use man-made materials much or at all in my projects. But I will have some sort of space underneath this. Again, additional storage of assembled components, and also if required, storage of man-made panels, plywood and so on and so forth. I'll also have a bench in here. This is where I can then lay the rough cut lumber down and start to assess it for fits to the project and identify where the key components are going to come from. Just as a note, I will be building some storage underneath this bench. This bench is my old hand tool bench. I'm going to cut it down and repurpose it. And I don't want to lose my hand tools, so I'll build some dedicated storage for them underneath this bench. Preparation zone is really where the heavy lifting's done, and there's 3 components or 3 tools I want to bring into this space. There is a planer thicknesser, a bandsaw, and a miter saw. And between these 3 machines, this is where I can use the miter saw to cut to length, the bandsaw to rip to width, and the planer jointer to prep the surfaces and plane things down to final dimensions. And then that allows me to take those cabinet ready timber components into my production zone. The production zone is really going to be a mobile space, so I can move things around. And not only do I want to do that inside the workshop, but I also want to be able to take these tools quickly and easily out onto site in case I need to do work on customer locations. So I'm going to invest incredibly heavily in the Festool system. So you're going to see a multifunction table inside here, you're going to see the track saw, you're going to see Festool dust extraction, the compact modular system, the miter saw is going to be the Festool Capex saw or Capex saw, and everything is going to be stored in sustainers, not just the Festool tools that tend to come in sustainers, but everything. All my rags, my finishes, drill bits, etc., will all have a dedicated place inside the Festool sustainer system, so that I'll be building a sysport here to store all that. And that quickly allows me to select the right box for the job I need to do, take these tools and take them out on site as required, so really give me a lot of flexibility. And I can also quickly move these things around inside this space as they're pretty portable, and that will allow me to maximize the overall space. Now I understand where all the machines are, I can now lay out my power. Now this is going to be a dedicated circuit linking back to the house consumer unit. So on the wall up here somewhere there will be an isolation switch and a dedicated workshop consumer unit. And from that consumer unit I'll be running a ring main. Now all of the tools inside the workshop, with the exception of the planer jointer, will actually work on standard UK 13 amp 240 volt plug and sockets. So I'll be building a ring main. So to do that I'll be building some wooden trunking throughout the workshop, and this will have a whole host of sockets in there, giving me a lot of flexibility. Also bear in mind I want to be able to film inside this workshop space, so the flexibility to put cameras in different locations is going to be invaluable to me. The planer jointer is the exception. The planer jointer actually works on a dedicated 16 amp socket, and there are special sockets for those. So there'll be a dedicated circuit from the workshop consumer unit to that to feed that planer jointer. On this backspace here I'm going to build some shelves, and those shelves will store a variety of design books I've got, some operating manuals for the various machines and tools that we're going to be using, and customer records, as well as design blueprints for those things I'm actually building. So that will be quite a nice feature, and it'll also make quite a nice backdrop, I think, to the camera work. So this is the overall design, and you can see how the flow works. I store the timber, I lay out the timber, I prepare the timber, I make the final product, I assemble and I finish and I ship off to the customer, and I use very organized storage throughout the workshop to help me to assemble that with all the information I need readily available here. So that's pretty much it. Now I understand the design and the layout, the next thing I want to focus on is the budget. So I took a guide price for each of the tools, so I've actually identified exactly what it is I'm going to buy. So I understand the planer jointer, for example, comes from Axminster and it's the model AT107PT. I know the bandsaw is going to come from Axminster and it's the BS11 inverter bandsaw. Inverter means I can control the speed of that electronically, not just via the typical belt pulley system, and that's useful because I want to also be able to cut laminates using that device, and it's great for that. Say Festool Capex saw, Festool compact modular system, both with the table saw module and also the router module and the various routers and so on and so forth. I've also allowed some additional money for the material that I use to do the cabinets, and when I add all this together, my equipment is going to come in round about £9,500 UK pounds. The stock for building cabinets is around about £500, so my subtotal budget is about £10,000. I'm adding 10% contingency to that, which is what I normally do. It gives me £1,000. So I need to budget £11,000 for this workshop build. And that's not a bad price. And once I've got that, you'll then see me studying my workshop, and hopefully we will start to build some fine cabinets that our customers want to buy.
That's the design that we're going for. Put into perspective, this is the single car garage that we'll be working on first. This about here backwards will be the production zone. Here forwards is going to be the preparation zone, and the half car garage is just through there to my right hand side. Talking about the cladding, this is what I mean by the cladding. It's just a pine cladding. I put a conduit around here in wood, and that allows me to run all the power cables in. I'm going to put that all the way around the workshop, so obviously I need to clear the walls. Job one is I'll move this bench, I'll cut the bench down to size, and I'll store it for temporarily at the front in what will be the preparation area. That allows me to take all of the hand tools and put them on top of the bench for the time being, so they're out of the way. All the things on the floor here may look disorganised, but I've actually sorted all the junk out, and that's what I'm going to keep, and it's going forward into the business with me. And I've ordered about 6 sustainers that's going to store all that stuff in some sort of structured way, and obviously that will be built into the sys ports when we get to build them. MFT table will be about here, My capex saw or capex saw will be about here, and just to the front there is where the bandsaw will go. I'll sort this area out, the half car garage, and then I'll move the wood store from there into the half car garage, and I'll clear that space out. So I'll build some storage for outside to get the bikes and other things out of the way, and then the bench can move into there, and then I can put in place here on this side the planer jointer. Now we're pretty much good to go. So next episode we'll crack this workbench, we'll get it cut down, we'll get it moved, and we'll get this area cleared. Stick around.